Hi there and welcome to House & House Essentials, and today we're going to work with the leasing team on what it takes to be phenomenal in leasing. And we've got two of the best that are going to join us on the podcast. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Vijay, lovely to have you as well.
Cheers, Josh.
So today, guys, we're going to talk about the foundations as though you're brand new, and this is the most important foundational conversation because if you get really good at the basics, then it makes you phenomenal inside of the leasing world. And we're going to work through some different models that are going to help people to really learn what it takes to become. So we're going to work through a couple of those things. So Chris, we might start off with you because we're going to start off with having phenomenal area knowledge.
Yeah.
So when you come out to Dubai, there's like lots of different communities that we're going to get to look after. And when you're in a position that you get to choose a particular location or you're put into a particular location, how do you go about getting phenomenal area knowledge?
So first of all, obviously you get directed into your first communities from the management. So if you're going to go to, so my area is DAMAC Hills. So I'm a senior leasing consultant of DAMAC Hills and Mudon.
Yeah.
Dubai land area, so the villa communities, townhouses. With that, when you first start off, they give you everything which you need to succeed. So you need to look mostly into like the master plans, layouts, prices, everything which you should probably know, because when you're obviously prospecting, you're calling landlords, they're going to question you. These are guys which have been in the market for years and they get people call them every single day. And if you're not an expert in your area, they're going to question you on that. Like for example, I had a landlord call me, well, I called the landlord on a prospecting call. They absolutely rinsed me a new one within the first 2 weeks. And by then I got my script right, I got my layouts right, I got everything which was needed for me to be an agent which was an expert in the area. So the costs, how much they are renting for. Sales price isn't really much of an area which you need to kind of cover as a leasing agent, because when you're calling, you're prospecting for the leasing side of things. They're just the minor touches which you probably should know to begin with when you're making them calls, because if you don't have that basic knowledge of how much they do cost and the layouts and the type of units which you are calling about, then you're setting yourself up to failure, because landlords do just crucify you here if you're not ready to know the areas.
So interesting enough, I did some work with Simon Baker recently, and I said to him, we're going to use deep research inside of ChatGPT. So I said, okay, imagine that I'm a leasing consultant inside of Dubai and I'm going to look after DAMAC Hills. I need to know everything about that area. Tell me about transport, how you get there, what type of buildings are, when they were built, what type of floor plans exist, what size of properties are there, are there 1-bedders, 2-bedders, 3-bedders? Are we in a position that we've got units, have we got villas? Tell me about the local schools, the local connections. Are there particular things that might drive price points? So views, for example, or maybe access to water or access to golf courses. Tell me a little bit about where you go for breakfast, where you go for lunch, where you go for dinner.
Yeah, so obviously with the commute from DAMAC Hills to the city centre, that's kind of what people want to know, is how close it is to the cities, how close it is to the polo clubs, the nearest brunches, like stuff where people kind of want to take their families. So in my area, there's the DAMAC Hills Park, which is kind of renowned as one of the best parks in Dubai. It's better than a Dubai Hills, probably the Dubai Hills consultants probably wouldn't want to hear that, but it really is. So a lot of people do move to DAMAC Hills for this reason. It has like huge landscapes, like you can go take picnics, football pitches, like everything which is needed to kind of think you're back in like Europe or somewhere where you can kind of like enjoy the larger spaces, because a lot of the certain developments kind of have quite small amenities and stuff, which is kind of good for ticking over, but obviously each community has its own unique selling point, doesn't it?
And you need to know that, right?
Exactly.
So what I did with Simon is I did his location of Arabian Ranches, and I gave him the full ChatGPT lowdown on how to live in Arabian Ranches, and he said, mate, this has got better knowledge than I've had, and I've lived there for 15 years. And that whole foundational idea is that literally that's ultimately how you build great area knowledge, is to know everything. So once it's actually giving you that, go get in the car, drive to the local villages, drive to local shopping centres, local strip shops, if there is one, have a little bit of a look at where the local coffee shops are, know where people might go for dinner if they're staying local, and how long it's going to take to get to the airport, how long it might take to get to downtown as an example. Now, Vijay, why that's an important foundational idea is that area knowledge is one thing. The second thing is then building out market knowledge. So what is a 1-bedder, 2-bedder, 3-bedder, 4-bedder, 5-bedder lease for? What's happening to prices in that area? Are they going up? Are they staying the same? Are they coming back? Is there new supply coming on that could impact? what's happening on the demand side? Is there lots of people wanting to try to lease out these types of properties, or do we need to offer some sort of incentive to try to get people into them because there's too many available and not enough people in the leasing market? How do you build market knowledge? Because area knowledge is one key thing, but that market knowledge is the next key thing to be able to provide advisory to an owner, right?
Yeah, from our perspective, we're using Property Monitor, which is something all our agents really go to look at historic data, but also current trends as well.
Sure.
Now, looking in terms of breaking down 1 beds, 2 beds, 3 beds, all the way up to 5 beds, you can almost get really granular with that data and identify the number of transactions that there are, how much it's renting for, contract lengths and so forth, and then that helps the agents really determine what the market's actually doing in that given time, of course.
Given the seasonality of the year, are there certain times of the year where you tend to get better prices for property and other times of the year where you don't get as good a price?
I mean, the landlords are probably in a position to ask for a better price through the summer months.
Yes.
Historically, more so for the bigger units. Now, that naturally happens because families move over and the kids are going to start school around September time.
Yes.
So generally what you'll see is landlords asking a bit more of a cheekier price, which is expected, but then on the same side, you've also got tenants who are willing to pay it because they know they need to get their kids in school. So yeah, the summer months for us historically have been really, really good.
And so the best thing to probably do is go and have a look inside of that market. Out of the last 20 transactions that have leased, what did they lease for? How was that going against historical trends? Are we seeing a bit more demand or a bit more supply? And is that therefore making price elasticity a little bit softer or stronger on behalf of the owner? And what should we be doing in terms of representing them going forward? Now, Chris, is a really important conversation because if we know our area stuff and then you know what's actually happening in the market, you can provide great advisory. That then moves us into the transactional side of the documentation. What are the things that you actually need to have signed on behalf of an owner in order to represent them and in order to be able to claim your fee in introducing a tenant?
So obviously all fees are covered by the tenant. So like today, I had a prospecting call, someone saying that their property is coming available. The landlord was a bit confused, saying, is there a fee from my side? Do I have to do anything with the marketing? I was like, listen, it's a hands-free investment for yourself. The agents basically take everything over by themselves. They run the marketing side, the listings. Everything needs to be done for it to be attractable online is done by the agency. But obviously the fees is obviously covered by the tenant, so it's a 5% fee. But with the landlord, all you really need is obviously the signed contract, their title deed, their identification. Other than that, it's a pretty hands-off investment for them and a hands-off process for them, exactly. Most of it is to be done with the tenant. The tenant kind of has a bit more of a job to do with the landlord, but yeah, it's pretty side from the tenant.
And confirmation of the actual terms. So for example, the number of checks, or for example, what their weekly rental amount is going to be. So how do you establish that with you?
So obviously if you're trying to negotiate a price, say if it's listed at 200,000 dirhams, usually that would be like on the high end on like a 4-check payment. So usually if they want to try and get a discount, they'll come down to a 1-check or 2-check. Usually with an immediate start date, that would also help with the negotiations. But if obviously they want 6 checks or 12 checks, which are kind of they're not very common in this type of industry. Like obviously in Europe, we work on a monthly payment basis. Here, it's very different compared to what it usually is, because it's quite strange to think that someone will pay 1-check payment up front, because all that liquid cash, you could probably use it for your own investments or something. So we do kind of deal with that a lot. So a 4-check method is probably like the most common. But obviously with that, you're probably paying the more of the premium prices of the rentals. But if you want a discount, you're probably going to be looking at the single check or 2 checks.
So understanding the briefing from the owner is a really important foundational concept,
of course,
to make sure that you've got everything very clear about what the expectations are, what they will accept and what they won't accept. That moves us into an interesting conversation, Vijay, about actually making sure that we've got everything right, that we're doing everything that we need to do to make sure the tenant's the right calibre of person to be moving into the property to make the recommendation. Now, moving through those negotiations and getting accepted, what are some of the important things that we've got to do on the tenant side to make sure that everything is legally binding and that we're in a position that we've actually moved from interest to actually a transaction proceeding?
Naturally, with the tenant, the qualification piece is really, really important, and the questions that are asked during qualifying will help determine hot or cold in terms of move dates and other factors around that deal. Now, ultimately, making sure they've got their Emirates ID is quite pivotal, because that's then going to help a tenant register their Jari, which will then trigger DY and so forth. So making sure they've got their Emirates ID is really, really important. But again, these questions are normally asked through the qualifying phase. Making sure we've got their move dates, how many people are moving in, what's their non-negotiables almost, is really, really important, because once we can identify that, then that's where the conversation around area, bedrooms, budget really come in, because someone who might have a 100k budget wants to move in an area like Dubai Hills, straight away off the cuff we can say that's not really going to happen. We need to look at other areas.
It's a really important foundational concept, Chris, to then get right about understanding the brand knowledge, because you're going to be there in front of an owner and they're like, well, why should I use House and House to do that? How do you build brand knowledge around what it is that we've done in the past? Having a bit of an understanding about market share that we might have, or that's access to tenants? Like, what are some of the things that you use when you're selling House and House?
So at the end of the day, the larger agencies in Dubai are mostly the more successful. They get a lot of traffic come through, clients from all around the world obviously see our Instagram, they see the podcast. This is obviously what they kind of see as a successful brand. So you kind of got to kind of push them down into the avenue of that we are the best, and that if you don't use us, then you're probably going to be slacking on standards, you're going to be slacking on the process of actually getting the deal done. It's going to be a lot messy for you if you're working with an agency which has been in the market for 1 or 2 years, but when you've been with a company that's been on the market for 10 years plus, obviously especially with the experience that House and House brings, obviously with the training, the support, you're giving everything to be successful from the get-go. As long as you're reputable and as long as you kind of carry yourself well, they will see that you are professional in what you do, and if you kind of slacking in standards, then they'll realise that you're not probably the agent for them, so you kind of need to be on the ball for that type of stuff.
Vijay, one of the things that I talk about is like a brand uplift story. So what's the cheapest property we've leased? What's the most expensive one? Yep. What's the smallest one we've leased? What's the biggest one? How many do we actually lease per year? How many people do we actually get to service on an annual basis? How many of those people then use the other service lines? For example, whether or not that might be our property management or commercial or residential sales or buying off plan, to give people a bit of an understanding of the scope of what it is that we've actually got here at House and House. How important is it for someone to, when they come into work here, they really understand those brand attributes to be able to sell that to consumers about the reasons why they should use us?
Incredibly important from a new person's perspective. Now, prospecting is going to be a very big part of calling out in leasing, but in terms of creating opportunities, that can come through the different avenues of property management, because we've got a relationship with the landlord already, or our residential sales team, they're already working with buyers and sellers, and a lot of these sellers may actually change their mind and go, actually, change the circumstance, I now need to rent. So just having multiple service lines enables these guys to go from zero to hero quite quickly as well, because of the support system that we've got in place and the service lines, of course.
Really important foundational piece is to think about a menu. And Chris, I don't know about you, but I like going to a restaurant because they've got a menu and you get to choose things. And I think that this is one of the things that a lot of people don't think, that when it comes to generating leads, what's the menu of the things that are actually available in the way that you could go to generate opportunity for a property that you could go and get a tenant for. So if you think about that, one of the conversations in some communities might be that there's new supply that's coming online. So with so many properties that have been sold off plan over the course of the last 5 years, depending on the payment plan and the completion date on those properties, there will be new buildings that will be coming into the market. How important is it to be aware of new buildings that are coming to the market and new supply that might be entering that you have not previously ever had the chance to lease before?
Well, I feel like having good relationships with agents who are obviously in the development side. So when you kind of get new developments handing over, you get certain leaflets, or landlords have certain data which is quite useful for agents. So obviously minding that it's obviously within like the rules of calling out, of warm calling as they call it now, you kind of have to use them master plans and the data to your advantage. Obviously these people probably get 100 calls a day, so you kind of need to be that agent who's within the realms of obviously being a qualified agent, because there's 20,000 agents in Dubai, so you have to make sure you're sticking out.
And I don't think that's that whole conversation is that whoever has sold them the property is ideally the person that's going to refer the person that should lease it, right? So it's like, hey, look, we know that the building's coming to completion soon, it's probably soon going to be vacant. Is it still your intention to have it leased? And if it's the case, hey, what would it take for Chris to be able to lease that on your behalf? He's our specialist for the area. I'd love to get him through, and he can have a bit of a conversation on what we expect it's going to lease for, because it's probably going to be a new strike rate that a lot of people have never leased a building before. So what does that now mean? And I do different floors, have different amounts, and what is a car park worth or not worth inside of that particular building, so you can actually understand how that drives pricing. Vijay, the secondary part is then go and have a look at all of the existing supply, right? Because obviously you got new supply which is coming to the market. That's a different way of prospecting. Tell us a little bit about existing supply. How do you go after owners to try to get the opportunity to let out their properties?
A lot of our CRM system is built over the 12 years that House and House have been in business. So that naturally just enables us to go at a lot of owners that have got properties across Dubai. A lot of the new guys, when they started through training, will be told to do a lot of prospecting, which is creating opportunities. introducing themselves, and there's a lot of opportunities to make sure that even tenants may have actually owned properties as well. So change of circumstances can result in tenants saying, I actually owned a property or do still have a property. But as a result of that, can you lease out my unit? So
is it that easy to say, hey Vijay, quick question, have you bought a property locally in Dubai before?
Absolutely.
Given that you're a tenant, what would it take for us to be able to let that out? When's the expiry date on that particular lease? If we're not managing it, would we have the opportunity to be able to let it for you? And it's like really basic thing about keeping a really good quality diary note, calendar note, making sure that's sitting inside of Reap it as an opportunity to go and chase, and making sure that you're very meticulous that lease end date is probably going to be an opportunity. Now, if it's sitting inside of House and House, there'll be the renewals team that will be looking after that. If that renewal doesn't proceed, then maybe that'll come back into the leasing pool. But it is really important to actually make sure you're super organised in the way you got to work your calendar, right? Chris, we also talk about like just learning how to create opportunity. I'm now with you and I'm saying, you mate, you know what, we've got to get as many as we can. What would you go to straight away right now if you and you, knowing what you know now, to get a couple on the board as quickly as we can to get to budget?
Is that for prospect? Is that for landlords
generating leads?
For generating leads, so the best way to generate leads is probably to get stock online. So to get stock online, obviously you need to be calling out on CRMs. Mostly we use a CRM. Our data is huge. Like we have page and page of data. So with that, we need...
What do you say when you ring someone? So let's say I'm me and you're ringing me and you know that I'm an owner. What do you say when you do that call?
Well, in the day, we need to try and find out if the property is coming available. Introduce yourself first.
So yes, it is becoming available in a month's time.
It's just kind of, because with leasing, it's kind of simple to try and find out that if the unit's coming available, when's it coming available?
So lease expiry date's the most important.
Lease expiry date, and obviously if it isn't coming available, you need to find out when, or if it's been sold, or if not, if they're looking to sell, obviously then you can offload it to the sales team. But obviously if you're trying to find new clients, you need to just prospect really. You need to just qualify.
Pick up the phone and just keep ringing. And that's that whole idea, is that like all of the data is sitting in there of all the people that own, and whether or not it's a building, for example, or you're choosing a villa, or you're choosing a particular community, how do I ring through and try to get all of that data to understand when the lease expiry dates are?
That's it from like the landlord side. But obviously once you then get the unit online, say if the property is coming available in the next 2 months, then obviously then you can put it into like your TLAs, or you can then get the property online, generate your clients, which obviously it all determines on how good of a quality you've got it listed online. Because if it's not been true checked, if it's not on a high quality listing, if it's not on the premiums, which obviously House and House kind of lead on them type of things. Obviously with the smaller companies, they can't really keep up with our influx of premium listings. So it just depends on the quality side of things with the listing, and then that's how we generate our clients. So from then, obviously then you would call them, or find out their requirements, find out exactly what they're looking for. If they're looking for other communities, you could then obviously send them other communities, and kind of what you need to do to be successful, you kind of need to take that client along with you on their journey and make them use you as their agent. So you need to make sure that obviously you know them other areas, because if you don't, they're just going to use someone else who does know them areas. So it's best to kind of diverse yourself along what is around your current area, because if not, then you're going to lose them. Most definitely.
And Vijay, it's also too about creating opportunity, right? That you might have someone, for example, they've just gone to go and buy something, and so all of a sudden that's now being completed off plan. They're going to move into that, and their existing property they're in today, they need to lease out. So it's also to having that great relationship with sales to understand who's actually bought something, moving forward to completion, already owns something, and therefore might actually now have something that needs to be leased out. If you're thinking about creating opportunity, are there any other areas of data sets or people that you like to get the guys to focus on to get them up to budget as quickly as possible?
The CRM system's naturally number one, but then just making sure they've got key relationships with people in off-plan and sales as well, because the conversation with sales, hopefully while our guys have been involved in the transaction, so they're aware that client A has actually just bought their new place and they're moving into it. But they've also got a backstory in terms of where their previous agreement was as well. And that whole referral system is really, really important. So that's really key.
And I'm also a big believer of like even just calling existing customers and finding out A, if they've got referrals, or B, if they've got additional properties in the supply chain. So hey Vijay, it's Josh, thought I'd give a quick call. I know that we've been able to lease out a property for you in the past. Did you have anything else in your portfolio that we might be able to look after? And by the way, do you know anyone else in Dubai that I could help? And not like, just being like really simple to think about the quality of that customer service experience can really change the way that people think and act. You were talking a bit about like trying to drive the demand side. What do you do when you're actually generating leads and finding tenants that could lease out properties that you know that you've got an instruction on?
Well, it's all to do with word of mouth as well. A lot of my clients are repeat business. So if I've done a good job with one client, then they're going to obviously refer me to one of their friends, family, in their industry, whatever. So that's a lot of where my traffic comes from. But other than that, obviously with the quality of listings online, that is huge. Obviously, I prefer to having quality over quantity. It's okay having 40 units online, but if only 10% of them are on the first page, highly listed within the property portals, then you're not going to be successful. I'd rather just keep it onto like a 20, like 15 to 20, like high quality, all true checked, all certified. In that sense, to really get the most exposure on the market as possible.
And also getting smart too, that if you've got a couple of people who are trying to lease the same style of property, go get another couple of. Like, that's the basic idea. Is there anything else in the building, anything else in the area? But what other owners could I go and ring right now? Because I know there's a lot of demand for 2 bedrooms, so I'm going to go and try and get a couple of extra 2 bedrooms on right now, because I actually know there's the demand level to do it. This is an interesting one, Vijay, about like learning to read the market of the day. What we're hearing about is that literally there's going to be a massive oversupply of 1 bedroom apartments soon, given the completion of some of the buildings across the broader community in Dubai. How does that impact your mind and your discussion with owners about pricing? You know, because someone else might be offering a price much higher than what you believe the market will pay. How do you have that conversation with the owner and still get that instruction to be able to lease the property out on their behalf? Yeah,
currently where we sit with sticking with the 1 bedrooms is we've probably seen an increase in price gradually over the last couple of years. But as there happens to be an oversupply of the 1 bedrooms, it's the conversations with the landlords that we'll need to say or try and predict the future by saying the prices are actually going to plateau out and actually stabilise. So the price increases that they predetermined when they were actually purchasing off plan at that given time would have been, okay, I'm going to get X amount. And that might have been true in terms of when they bought it off plan, but we need to have some tough, honest, open conversations with landlords sometimes and say the market actually isn't where it is due to supply and demand. So the price that you perceived you were going to get actually isn't true, and we probably need to drop it by 5-10k and it'll become rentable. Essentially for us, it's about making sure we've got great market exposure, and at the end of the day, when there's tenants that are looking at 1 bedrooms, they want to go for price first along with amenities and so forth, but the price is going to be a very key component to do they rent, do they not rent.
And you need to know like literally what's really driving the price of this particular one. So is it the height in the building, for example? Is it a conversation around an extra car park or an extra storage cage? Is there something else there in terms of the gym or the pool or better sun time that might actually drive the price in that particular location? You need to know what that upside actually looks like. When you think a bit about that, it's really important to get to budget quickly. And Chris, I know a lot of people have got anxiety about that when they first start. What is the easiest way for someone to get to budget inside of this business?
I always ask them, what is your maximum budget? And they'll always kind of give me a rough figure, but then I would always show them something on the higher side of their budget, just to kind of see how we can kind of tempt them to come to the better properties, of which are probably on the higher side, but something which I believe they could potentially close on. I would show them. But if it's something which they're only saying that, but then you show them something on their match budget and they're just like, no, we can't do this. We really can't do it. So it's best to show them something on the higher side first.
And then show them what they can afford.
And then kind of show them what they can afford, but that will kind of show you how serious they are with their budget, because sometimes, like, I recently just closed a unit on someone who had a budget of 700k and we just closed something on 860,000 in Arabian Ranches one. So it always starts off like
you set off a number and then you see something you like, you end up paying more. Vijay, when you think about that on the targets side of stuff, you know, making sure that people are successful and getting through to make sure that they're making their minimum number every month. How do you get people to be able to get income coming in quickly when they're working inside of the leasing teams?
A key part of it is just making sure that there's routine discipline in their actual diary. When we're looking through their diaries through Monday all the way through to Fridays, and the weekends are really, really important as well, because that's quite a hot spot to make sure people are going on viewings. Tenants tend to be a bit more relaxed at that stage, so they're a bit more forthcoming with making offers. So a lot of diary management, not in a micromanagement perspective, but just to make sure people have got good diaries, routine and structure heading into the week, the month and even the quarter is really, really important, because if they have that, what we'll tend to see is people are in the office in the morning prospecting, creating opportunities, and then in the afternoon they're out the office and the office becomes a little bit more quieter, but they're out on viewings and creating offers and opportunities.
Do you find that there's a bit of a relationship between the number of viewings that you do and the number of offers that you receive?
Absolutely. Our aim is to ideally do 15 to 18 viewings in a week as a minimum.
Right, so that's basically what, 3 a day?
3 a day. We'd expect them to be out the office in the afternoon for that.
But
then some of the brokers, Chris has gone on to become one of our senior agents, which we didn't see a lot of him in the office, but when we got the emails coming through,
yes,
it was
we knew he was doing something.
Yeah, contracts are being drafted, offers
Yes.
are being made, and not every single offer
Yes.
concluded
Also,
into
add
the
to that
deal.
as well, because there's not much micromanagement in the sense that it's belittling or you kind of feel like someone's looking over you.
Yes.
In that sense, which is kind of what a lot of people like to move into an industry which is like that. But obviously, if you feel like you're not closing, you're not doing the work which you should be, there's always help there.
Yes.
The support's always there. And if you're not closing, there's always a reason why you're not closing.
Yeah.
It's either that you're not structuring your days properly, you're not doing the viewings, it could be down to your listings, it could be the way that you're dressed, the way that you're talking to your
Yes.
clients.
Yeah.
So there's always reasons why you're not closing. It is very standard driven. It's
Yes.
quite a systematic approach to why it isn't working. Because when I first started, I come to Jake nearly 2 months in, I wasn't closing. I
Yes.
said to him, I said, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. He goes, right, just break it down. I said, why aren't you getting inquiries? Is it overpriced? Is the quality of your listings not done correctly? Are you speaking to your clients? Are you giving them the quality of which they deserve? Or are you actually working with them?
And the frequency of like building relationship is it like, how do you build a relationship fast, relevant, frequent and consistent? Yeah. So am I making sure that my conversation is relevant? So if you're looking for a 2-better, here are 3 2-betters to look at. Am I frequent? I can get you through it. When would you like to come and see it? Reminder to turn up to the appointment, turn up at the appointment, post-appointment follow-up, like thinking about those things. And then being in a position, if someone wants to make an offer, how do we make it easy? And someone said to me that like the secret to any business is make it really easy for people to give you money. And I know that sounds like a funny thing, but a lot of people are like, well, if you've never leased in Dubai before and you don't know how the system works, well, where's the brief sheet on what to do if you're about to lease in Dubai for the first time? Yeah. Does that make sense? You need your Emirates ID, you need this, you need that, you're paying checks. Checks, did you say? Yes, checks. You know, so you start explaining to people how it actually works in this part of the world. If they've done it multiple times before and they already know, quick reminder, don't forget you're going to need these things when you go to lease a property. And here are some things that you might need to know in terms of advance notice that you need to give if you want to move in this particular location. You can't move in on a Saturday and Sunday. You can only move in on Monday to Friday, and you need to give 48 hours notice. Like that style of thing is a really important foundational piece. When I would look at it, Chris, drive us through on core activities. So I'm a big believer that there's kind of like core activities that you do every day of the week, and then there might be certain days of the week where you only do a specific activity. So like on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I always look at this at like, you know, one of the greats is that if you go to a restaurant, it's a good restaurant, before they open, they always have a meeting every day and they're saying, hey, this is what we've got on special today and this is who's coming in and this is what we expect tonight. And they brief all of their team.
It is kind of like that.
Yes.
It's kind of like that because every day is different. It just depends if you've got, say you've got viewings on a Monday from 8 until 12.
Yes.
Obviously after them viewings, you then go back to the office, you catch up on previous viewings from the previous day, follow up with them. Like following up's probably one of the most important things in real estate to do, because with the competition out there, you need to make sure that you are on top of your clients. Otherwise, someone else will come along and sweep them up off you. But obviously, if you prepare yourself in the sense that I always come in and I'll write down my day.
And what does that day look like?
So it will just always start, obviously, if I do the viewings, then we come back to the office and I'll kind of go through my TLAs, make sure what is still available.
Yes.
Call out the landlords, obviously see if they're willing to reduce the price. If it's been sitting on the market for a month, there's obviously something wrong with that.
Yes.
If they're that desperate to rent, if they're not, then okay, we can leave it here for another week or so and we'll come back to that, no problem.
Would you potentially recommend that it might be time to change the carpet or repaint the internals or do some maintenance?
So that's also a big thing. A lot of landlords here, for some reason, they like to keep their units in a condition where the tenant's just left.
Yes.
But if you want to get it rented quicker, you'd have to tell them, listen, you've got to spend 10,000, 15,000 dirhams to get this to a standard of which someone's going to be looking at from their perspective, ready to move in. Because a lot of these landlords, they're a bit stingy with their cash sometimes until someone's put down a deposit.
Yes.
Because you can see where they're coming from, if they haven't got the cash there maybe, or there's other reasons. But throughout the day, if you're just trying to catch up with your clients as well, mostly, because they're the ones paying your commission. So you need to make sure that if they're looking in certain areas, why haven't they closed in your area? Is there a reason? Is it the time base? Is it because they're looking at this area here, which you haven't obviously covered? You need to try and find that out as soon as possible, because you will lose them. You wouldn't hear from them for a couple of days about what's going on here.
Yeah, it hasn't necessarily translated across from commercial into residential.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they do in the commercial world is they have a thing called an incentives list. And that incentives list could be like a rent abatement or a reduction in rent, or maybe a shorter term, or maybe they might repaint it, or they might contribute to fit out. Now, we don't talk that way in residential, but actually if you had a list of like, here are some possible things that you could do in order to get your property leased. We could change the rental amount. We could be in a position that we could repaint. We could recarpet, we could change out the kitchen bench. We could be in a position that we could offer an extra car park if there's one available in the building, that we could, like you could package it up. Yeah. So you start thinking about how all of that comes together. And most people are not that entrepreneurial to think that way of what are the options. And so this is really about actually understanding, hey, how urgent is it for you to get cash flow? If we know that ultimately the property is going to be vacant, then this is what we would need to do to get it leased again. My recommendation, if you want to get the top price, you would do these things. How open are you to that, or do you just want to get it leased in the current condition? And I think that's a really important bit, is to make sure that you don't miss the business, but you're getting a really good quality brief. And what I always say is that literally, if you're in a dark room, turn the light on, give you some creativity to think about what you actually do, because just waiting and for someone else to turn up out of the blue and pay an above market price is actually not a strategy. That's called hope, and we can't believe in hope. We've got to be in a position that we're very, very clear about process. If you think, are there any particular activities that you think are definitely a Monday job, a Tuesday job, a Wednesday job as a part of that?
Usually Mondays are kind of the slower days. You kind of stick to admin mostly. Yes. I kind of like to do my admin on the Mondays, so
dot I's, cross T's, make sure everything's done.
Yeah, just obviously with the CRM systems, everything's time-based management. So you need to make sure your prospects are at zero, market appraisals, your applicants being the clients that you deal with.
Yes.
Make sure they are obviously up to date. If they've already closed, and you can take them off the system. But if not, you kind of just need to make sure the CRM, because a clean CRM means a clean mind, clean business. So in the day, it's your own business you're running. If you can let a lot slip through your fingers if you're not on top of it.
Yeah.
It's commission only, but if you get everything right, if you work with all the tools that they're giving you, you're going to succeed.
Yes. So Vijay, when you got to have a quick look at that about the disciplines of like Monday to Friday, what do you see the best people in leasing do? Like those that scale from zero to hero pretty quickly. Yep. What's the difference between those that then just go, okay, does it come back down to that discipline?
Yeah, two factors. I think one of it's going to be on a skill level where naturally they're good at prospecting. They can have them conversations with the landlords, and get into their properties, take photos and get properties listed online. So the skill in and around prospecting, can we get live listings, can we negotiate deals when we're on viewing? They just do that a day quicker than some agents. And then on the flip side as well, I think there's a key component around mindset as well.
Yes.
Where it's an industry where there's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of no's that happen as well.
Yes.
But it's the ability to kind of move on from the no's and the rejections to seek further opportunity. And I think those that go from zero to hero quite quickly are just a day quicker or a couple of hours quicker than the other agents. But naturally, we'll see people develop themselves through their tenure at the company as well. So it's good to see people that haven't had the best first or second month like a Chris, and then actually go on and become a senior broker by the time they've got to month 7, 8, 9 or whatever it might be. So you tend to have a baseline of skills and behaviours that are needed, and then to see them level up obviously correlates in being successful within the business as well.
And this is one of the most important foundational pieces that I look at, is that I go, okay, if I'm going to work with you, I've got to make sure that you're really good at influence. Now, I think that you're at your most influential when you're face to face. And then it then drops down into then, okay, great, maybe I then go to over a Zoom meeting type thing or some sort of virtual FaceTime type thing. That then drops down into then say maybe it's going to be over the phone. Then after that, then it might be a voice note. Then after that, it might be like an SMS or a WhatsApp message. And then after that, it might be an email. And what I find is that people are trying to influence at email, but they're not actually getting back face to face or on the phone. And so that's that whole conversation is that if you want to be really successful, try to stay at the highest level of influence the longest, which is try to get more appointments, more on the phone, more often, and use SMS and WhatsApp messages and voice notes and emails more as confirmation tools after we've already spoken to the client. So Vijay, lovely to meet today. Here are 3 options. Let me know your thoughts. I can get you through for viewing next week. When you're on deck, let me know once you've confirmed your flights. So then that way you're actually keeping up with the client to actually know exactly where they're at and what they need to do. One of the big conversations is to really think about like how you turn everything that you know into some sort of form of a system. Now, Vijay, you've been on a lot of sides here at House & House, and particularly on the training side. Tell us a little bit more about the importance of not shying away from forms, checklists, visuals, and dialogues to actually make sure that what you're doing is scalable, and also to avoid easy mistakes that a lot of early brokers make.
Yeah, I mean, I've been at the company just under 3 years, and over that time, one of the things that we've developed with your support is knowledge base.
Yes.
And around knowledge base, it goes around the forms of just making sure we've got our forms, our checklists and dialogues. So Tom, who's our leasing trainer, we've got Cleaner, Abby and Sophie as well as the additional 3 trainers. They've all done a fantastic job in making sure knowledge base, which is great support for the agents to access. And when we get in a position of this works really, really well, we make sure we get that documented. The trainers will normally do a role play so they can hear how that sounds.
Yeah.
So a lot of agents are able to use that as coaching.
Yes.
And then just making sure it's really, really accessible. So at the click of a couple of buttons on their phone, even if they're not in the office, they can access knowledge base.
Yeah.
And in the same scope, if they're at their desk, I mean, me, Jake and Tom will always be available. But one of our key questions are, have you looked on knowledge base first? And on the flip side, to continue that developing, if we come to realise that the same question is being asked 3-4 times, it's then our duty to make sure it becomes accessible really quickly on knowledge base for them as well.
Yeah. So Chris is pretty full on selling knowledge base to us, but it is a really foundational idea, right? Because like as you're talking about, if you're going to take an offer from a tenant, you need to know a certain number of things to be able to represent that to the owner. Now that to me would say that like filling out a form is a really good way to do that, because that form captures all of that essential information. And you don't want to run, I'm not sure what they were going to do in terms of the payment of checks. Like you need to make sure that that's actually really clear up front, because if they've got 2 offers to consider, they want to make sure that they're going with the right offer that suits based on their terms, not just the price point itself. And that's what a form does, right? Forms capture information. Checklists make sure that you do everything in the right order. And then the next one after that is that then having a visual that can go and show and tell a story, that you can show where the access to transport is, so that people understand it when they come to that building, what the aspect is and why it's important on this particular property. And that then moves us into then killer dialogue, right? Any chance, what would it take? Would you like to lease this one? Is this the right one for you guys? Throw them the keys and say, hey, I want you to know what it's like coming home. I want you to open the door. And they can't open the door because it's too tight. But that basic idea is doing it. Last 2 parts I want to talk about is just about like energy management. So Vijay, you've been around a lot. You've seen people that come in and they kind of burn themselves up quite quickly. You've seen other people that pace themselves quite consistently and do very well. What do you think some of the secrets are around energy management in this game? Because it is relentless when it actually comes to leasing.
We're still a very big fan of your quadrant when you talk about performance zone, renewal zone, survival and burnout zone.
Yes.
And high energy, low energy, positive energy, negative energy. And I think just reiterating how important that is in an agent's work-life balance is super important, because people may well see the money and forget the renewal zone and just keeping that performance zone, which is high energy and positive energy. But staying in that quadrant in itself can really, really burn you out. And that's what we really want to avoid. So it's about making sure people have thought about their holidays. It's thought about family time. It's thought about, where do I get away from working? When can I put my phone on do not disturb? All them little things are really, really important. We don't just want the high performer to be performing all the time. But on the flip side, we don't really want the agent to be in renewal zone all the time, because then you won't actually do deals and transactions. So it's finding that balance and making sure that from Tom, who checks in with the agents for the first 3 months, I kind of support the agents between the month 4 to month 6 period, and Jake looks after the more senior brokers. We're all consistently making sure that we've got a good conversation in terms of how's things away from work as well. Because we know if things outside work are really, really stable, it's going to be a nice driver to make sure they can perform in work as well.
So Chris, when you hear that and you start to think about your own experience, like were there ever times where you've gone, far out, I wish I had have known that earlier, that I could have used that form or used that dialogue, and that would have helped me close the business. So therefore you didn't burn energy thinking about things that you didn't have to think about because the systems had already thought about them, if that makes sense.
So as well, like mostly when you've closed the deal, like the aftercare is something which I like to focus on quite a lot as well. It does drain you a lot, even though you're not supposed to do it. It's obviously the landlord's job, and if the tenant's moved from abroad, or if they're new to the real estate industry, like with renting and obviously moving to the buyer, you kind of want to hold their hand throughout that whole process. Because obviously these are your potential buyers, especially in leasing. You're working with people who can be your potential buyers, but if you want to obviously work on the systematic side of things, you kind of want to just stick to the basics. You don't want to go too far into the aftercare as such, but the next month's always a new month, isn't it? So you kind of just need to focus on the listings that you have, focus on how you can close these, because you want to kind of prioritize the listings that you've had from the beginning. So with positive energy, if you want to kind of bring that into the office, you can, but the office energy is always quite vibrant. You've got Vijay, the DJ. So the I'm office,
assuming that's got to do with your Spotify playlist, right?
The office vibe is really good, so you want to kind of keep that high, but obviously with taking that with you, obviously on your viewings and meeting clients, you need to keep that high as well, but you do need to kind of relax as well on the weekends. But even though weekends are quite a busy time for viewings, obviously meeting your clients, kind of just relax a little bit, because you can burn yourself out.
Yeah,
most definitely.
I think the most important foundation is that, like, if I don't find you being an estate agent, what do I find you doing? And that was the best list I ever wrote. So I'll be on a mountain bike, I'll be on a motorcycle, I'll be having a sauna, I'll be going for a run, I'll be catching up with friends, I'll be having a dinner. Like, I'll be doing one of those things. So if you don't see me doing this, then I'll be doing that. And I think a lot of people literally, because, you know, your whole life is here, and it's very important to make sure that you're financially stable and financially successful, and you've just moved to a new country, and you've got to build networks, and you've got to build relationships. Be easy on yourself, but also to be hard. And there's an old school saying that literally, that if you're in a position that regardless of success and failure, you can remain just the same, that's a fantastic outcome. And I remember that, you know, one of my most successful clients had just put the biggest deal of his entire career together. And you would think that he would go out and celebrate and have a nice lunch. No. The first thing that he did was picked up the phone and rang the neighbour and said, "Hey, this is what that one made. What would you allow me the opportunity to represent you on yours?" And, you know, always thinking that every single time that there's a transaction, that's a trigger event for you to be speaking to someone else in that building, someone else in that community who might have a property that you could be representing either today or in 6 or 12 months' time. But it's actually about making sure that you're building that pipeline and having that medium to long-term impact. Last little impact is about careers. Career progression. What we see is that leasing is usually a starting ground for a lot of people. I see it in two ways. It's a phenomenal starting ground to learn about buildings, people, area, transactional knowledge, understanding about what's happening in the Dubai market. It's the quickest way to go to produce income, but it's also an incredibly stable part of the service lines. So you could do this for a decade, and literally you'll be doing it on your ear, because it's such a easy, routine-based opportunity. Once you've got that base knowledge, then it's just about hitting that ball out of the park 10,000 times a day. Does that make sense? And probably that on-ramp is probably the most aggressive and hardest part of the learning. But once you get to that point, then it's finding the little tweaks for innovation to be able to do a few more extra transactions. Talk to us a little bit about that. Have you seen people that have come into leasing, stayed there for a long time? And you've probably also seen people come in and then they've migrated into sales after a 12-month period. Is it okay to do both as a part of their career progression?
Absolutely. I mean, ultimately for us, it's to support the journey of each individual.
Yes.
And that's really important to us. I think Jake does an incredible piece through interviewing as well.
Yes.
Because he's really keen to understand what's the long-term picture as well as the short-term picture. Yes. So with that said, yes, we're happy with people that just want to do leasing, and we've seen people do that and become really, really successful. And there's no harm in doing that. And that's quite beneficial to me and Jake as well, because then we have another experienced member of staff to kind of lean on. And they can almost be a positive voice around the office as well and share their experiences. And what we then see is people level up quite quickly as well, because they've got that experience of a Shirley Drayton that's been in the business for quite a long time, who's done record-breaking months and had incredible years, and share her knowledge with other people in the team, which is really, really positive. And then in the same vein, we see majority of the people come into leasing, like you said, really learn about it, because it's relentless in terms of transactions, viewings, offers, rejection, heartbreak, and the positive sides that come with it. But then on that side, normally after 12 months, Charlie Bannon and also Jake Walton sit down with the agent and say, what's next? And it's not say, cool, we're going to force you through the door and into sales you go. We get a good feel in terms of, are they ready? Are there a couple of things that still need to get tweaked? Or is now the right time for you to go into sales as well? And either way, we celebrate both sides of that story.
Chris, you were saying earlier, before we started the recording today, that you often see it in leasing before sales about what's about to come in terms of market conditions. Why do you feel that that's the case?
Mostly because the people I'm dealing with now, they tend to look at the different communities. They tend to see where they think they can see their families being brought up. Or so if you're further close to the city, you're going to be obviously close to the beach. If you want something in an apartment in Marina, or something which is a bit bigger, you would come to the villa communities, which are a bit further out. So the people that are renting off us now, they are our potential clients. Realistically, so I like to keep a good relationship with my clients. End of the day, if they're looking to buy, I'd always kind of note them buyer. I'll kind of keep them to myself unless they are looking to buy. Then we'll offload them to the sales team. But what you need to kind of look at is, that's why the aftercare I think is so important, because if they see that you are an agent for life, then what they'll do is use you to buy potentially when their lease ends. If they're looking to renew for a couple of years, let them know your journey to see if you are potentially going to be their agent when they eventually do look to buy. Because this is what we're all looking to do, really. Like, if people in leasing, if they're looking to pedestal themselves into the sales environment, you want to take the people who you've obviously been working with for the last year or two with you, so you kind of have a head start for people who just come to the buy with no phone contacts, with no prospects or anything like that. So you kind of, it is a huge advantage when you obviously come into leasing, because a lot of the brokers who are in the secondary market here in house and house and throughout Dubai, they do start in leasing, and obviously they can kind of catapult themselves into the sales department. So yeah, it's definitely great.
Awesome to speak with both of you guys today. A lot of things to learn. I think if we look at those foundational basics today, get your area knowledge great, learn a lot about your market, understand the transactional side, really understand the brand knowledge, then think about menus of things that you could do. So great work I could do today, ways I could generate leads, ways I could find tenants, what I could do to actually talk to an owner to make sure that their property is more lettable if all of a sudden the market starts to stick a little bit, and really thinking about the discipline of really getting those viewing numbers up, getting in front of people, doing more face-to-faces in the afternoon, and having structure and routine, to what it is that you do. And you can see very quickly, Vijay, why Chris has become one of the best in the business, because of just the discipline and the focus to actually make sure that everything's done on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but also to the daily disciplines that happen every day. Absolutely. To then drive appointment numbers on the weekends as well, to really be out there and working with people. So testament to both of you. Thank you so much for sharing your skill, knowledge, experience, and energy, most importantly, for one of the most important service lines inside of House and House. And thank you for joining us on The Essentials.